Welcome back to the channel, you guys. How are y'all doing today? How am I doing today? I don't know, my sinuses have been acting up. Something's in the air outside this weekend. My sinus was irritated. I was sneezing like consistently all day on Saturday. And then I woke up and my sinuses were like inflamed like to very like insane degrees. So forgive me if I'm talking a little odd today, or if I sound a little stuffed up today. I also have dental liners as well, and I'm gonna be on these for the next few months. So I'm trying not to have a lisp with y'all, so just like bear with me. I promise you we'll be back to normal in a few months on the talking front, but I'm gonna try my best today. If you've already seen the title of the video, you already know what we're gonna be talking about today. Obviously, we're talking about one of the most buzziest films from last year. What film am I talking about? Well, that is none other than One Battle After Another. So One Battle After Another is directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. It is written by Paul Thomas Anderson and Thomas Pynchon because it is adapted from his novel. It's produced by Paul Thomas Anderson, Pete Chiappetti, and Andrew Larry. The production company is Warner Brothers. Its cinematography is done by Michael Bauman, and the casting is done by Cassandra Kalukundis. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Tiana Taylor, Trace Affinity, Benicio del Toro, Alana Haim, Regina Hall, Jungle Pussy, Tony Goldwyn, Wood Harris, Kevin T, John Hugamatter. It's so many other people. So One Battle After Another is a film that I found to be extremely important in the context of itself, but not as impactful story-wise or performance-wise as like most people would want you to believe. It's a film about today's America. It's a film about immigration, border patrol crisis, about revolutionary liberation movements, militaristic fascism, and white supremacy, which is like what like most people would tell you it's about. But like the crux of the film is really just about everything that most Paul Thomas Anderson films are about. And what am I talking about? The state of California and fatherhood. In this film, we follow a newfound American revolutionary by the name of Ghetto Pat, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who aligns himself with the Southwest revolutionary movement called the French 75, and falls into a relationship with a fellow French 75 member, Perfidia Beverly Hills, played by Tiana Taylor, who, after a gradual downward spiral, ends up being a traitor to the French 75 by writing them out to the military's most absurd colonel in the region, Stephen Lockjaw, who is played by Sean Penn, who then sets out on a lifelong mission to eradicate the French 75 completely, leaving Ghetto Pat to flee with he and Perfidia's daughter, Charlene, to upstate California under new identities, Bob and Willa Ferguson. We time jump about 16 years into the future, where Ghetto Pat, now known as Bob, and teenage Willa, played by Chase Infinity, are being hunted by Stephen Lockjaw yet again, after he feels he must rid himself of any evidence that he may not be the purest white supremacist of his stature in the region, in hopes of being welcomed into the modern-day elite position of the KKK. The remaining evidence in question being that he's the true father to Willa Ferguson and not Bob. Bob, with the help of his former French 75 members and newfound revolutionary allies, must now try his hardest to protect Willa from the force of Stephen Lockjaw and the racial powers that be in America. Or more so, Willa must learn to protect herself. So what are my main touch points and takeaways from this film? So One Battle After Another is my first encounter with Paul Thomas Anderson. I had always heard about Boogie Nights growing up, but you know, when you're a kid, you're not really like hearing about a film. I don't know, maybe some other people are better cinephiles than I was as a kid, but you're not hearing about a film that like your parents and adults are talking about and really like going out and searching for it, mainly because back in the day, you really couldn't do that. I feel like kids today might have more access to that given like streaming, but I didn't at the time, so I didn't really look into it. But I always heard about Boogie Nights, and I didn't know who made it or anything like that. I just know the older adults around me were like referring to Boogie Nights here and there. And then you skip forward down to like my late high school years where Phantom Thread came out. And I heard a lot of buzz about Phantom Thread at the time when it came out because 2017 was a year that I kind of like really reignited my cinephilia and really dived back into like my love for film that I have once had like during like middle school or whatever. But at the time, Phantom Thread wasn't like my most like intriguing film being positioned to me. You know, 2017 was like kind of like a very loaded year in regards to like cultural culturally impactful films, I would say. And so I just never engaged with Phantom Thread at the time. And then about like 2 years ago, news of Leonardo DiCaprio and Tiana Taylor starting to film together caught my attention. And this is like coming off the heels of Leonardo DiCaprio being in Killers of the Flower Moon, which I wasn't really like fond of or big on, but like it was definitely talked about a lot, obviously because it's created by Martin Scorsese. And then also coming off the heels of 1001, which Tiana Taylor starred in, which I was very fond of and I was very big on. And I know there's a lot of conversations that like people were hoping Tiana Taylor was going to get like awards buzz to some degree for that role, which she didn't. So the intrigue was very much there for this film when I had heard the rumors of that. And then the trailer comes, and so I'm very intrigued. I'm like, okay, let's see what this is about. But watching this film exposed me to what Paul Thomas Anderson or the Paul Thomas Anderson experience is and what Paul Thomas Anderson is passionate about. What are those things that Paul Thomas Anderson is passionate about? I think the first thing on the list is California, as I just said earlier. The film utilizes California in ways that we don't really see in today's film landscape. LA is not really used a lot in regards to film production anymore, mainly because it costs too much. And I think the state of California might cost too much as well, so people go anywhere else outside of California to film their productions. I think the film most recently that utilizes California to the degree of one battle after another, I would say, is Crime 101, starring Chris Hemsworth and Halle Berry. I liked that film, first of all, but I think that film is set in LA, and like LA is like really a character in that film, and you don't see that a lot lately. A lot of people are just on sets that like replicate what LA is, or they're indoors in LA, but they're never really like outside in LA. And then being someone who grew up in Southern California, you know what LA looks like. And so I feel like it's very rare in today's time, and Paul Thomas Anderson, he makes sure that that is a part of his film in this film, but not like Southern California, Northern California, which has like a very distinct look to it. If you're from California, you would know what that looks like. And I think how he depicts Northern California in this film is great. All those scenes where like we begin the second act where we are with Bob and Willa at their house, and there's kind of like these big thick trees that are there, with like all the junkyard. I don't, was that like a junkyard? I'm really confused on what that was. Like, was that in their yard, or was that just like a junkyard that they were connected to? I think it was a junkyard they were connected to, but the dull but yet vibrant flair of Northern California is utilized here very well by Paul Thomas Anderson, as well as like all of like the desert, in regards to like Northern Central California and all the heat. I think the heat is really a character here too. Like if you, like I've watched this film already 3 times, so like if you pay attention to like what the weather is like for these characters, a lot of people are like perspirating a lot, and so it felt very California in my opinion. I think another thing Paul Thomas Anderson is really passionate about is his actors, more so like his actors and their relationship to the characters that he is offering up to them. Every actor in a PTA film films like they're like a part of the film, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel like they're just trying to portray the character that Paul Thomas Anderson is presenting to them. It feels like they actually have given a piece of their essence to the film that they are being a part of. And you can see in this film where you have Leonardo DiCaprio, who's depicting the character of Bob, and he's bringing his Leoisms, of course, to the character, but they don't just feel like Leo. They feel like it's Bob. Like it's pieces of Leo that's being given into the character, but you know that like when you're looking at this, you're not looking at the character of Bob and be like, that's Leonardo DiCaprio. You're kind of looking at it and be like, that's Bob. And you can see that in like Bob's erratic nature throughout the film, where, whenever Bob's paranoid, or whenever Bob's like excessively hitting the vape, or when he's like frustrated and his like excessive redness, and then just all like the quirkisms that come with like portraying like a middle-aged disturbed white man, which Leonardo DiCaprio does very well, are very prevalent here and executed very highly and well, in my opinion. And then you also have Tiana Taylor, who's playing Perfidia Beverly Hills here, who is bringing her innate bravado to the character, of course, and this very like dominant attitude that like I think most people perceive Tiana Taylor to have, but nobody really knows Tiana Taylor. So it's kind of like a persona of this like bravado and dominant attitude that she has, but she's like imbuing it into the character of Perfidia Beverly Hills. But you feel like you're watching Perfidia Beverly Hills. I don't feel like I'm just watching Tiana Taylor play herself, as I did in what's the movie? It's like The Rig or The Pit, like that just came out on Netflix that Tiana Taylor was in. That felt like Tiana Taylor was just playing Tiana Taylor. But here it felt like Tiana Taylor was like playing an actual character. And it's obviously because like there was proper direction in regards to like how her character was supposed to be portrayed on screen, right? And you can see that in like all of Perfidia's like line deliveries as well. It's very New York. It's very Tiana Taylor, and to a certain extent, all like, the iconic like get it up. I can't roll my tongue like she can, or like how a New Yorker can, but you know what I'm saying. And then you have Sean Penn, who's playing Stephen Lockjaw here, where he's exceptionally displaying like this ability to convey like oddity, as he always does, but more so just be like an irregular person in society. And it's felt in all of Lockjaw's mannerisms, when Lockjaw's stuttering, or when he's slurring, or when he's fidgeting, or when he's like spitting. It all translates in him like being able to like embody like this monstrosity that Stephen Lockjaw is in this film. And I think that I don't really dissect it as like Sean Penn is in front of me. I expected like I digested it. I mean, as Stephen Lockjaw is in front of me, and then we can even turn and look at Chase Infinity, who's playing Willa here, and she's bringing this like freshness to the screen, to the character with her portrayal. Where like I think everyone has first encountered, or I would say I first encountered Chase Infinity in Presumed Innocent, which came out in January 2025, which was her first on-screen role. So it's like she's obviously giving like a fresh energy on screen, but also her character in that show was very like muted to a certain extent on purpose, and so you don't really get a lot from her out of that. So then when you go down to the end of the year where she's in one battle after another, and she's giving this like very like unwieldy, stern performance, but also like very innocent to a certain extent, because she obviously is a child, right? And it's like all of that is seen in like how she stares in the film, and how she scrunches her face up, and her smirks and her screams and her body language, and she just has like her performance has like immense potential, which is expected because she's new on the scene, right? And we all gonna think that, but you can just feel it. Like she really is great. And I haven't gotten around to watching the Testaments yet, but I do want to, and I feel like that's even gonna further my opinion that Chase Infinity has like a long road ahead of her in regards to like her ability to portray characters on screen. But I think that Willa being like her first film character on screen is so perfect, because she executed it to a T, in my opinion, as to what like the vision of what this character is supposed to be and convey was supposed to be for Paul Thomas Anderson. And then you have Regina Hall, who's playing Deandra here, and giving like this gentle yet piercing essence to her performances, as she always does. And it's felt everywhere with Deandra's presence in this film. Like you have the intro scene when she's assisting and orchestrating the ice camp raid, or when she has those bonfire moments with Bob, or when she's fleeing from downtown and when she's screaming after the car crashes, or when she's crouching down in the escape car in that same sequence and like looking out the window as the cops fly by them. Or when she's like aiding Bob and fleeing to a new city with baby Willa. Or when she's like meeting Willa in the bathroom for the first time again. Or when she's like throwing the phone out the car because Willa lied to her. Or like when she senses Lockjaw's battalion is at the nunnery before they even enter the building or the room. But I think it's the building. I'm gonna give her the building because I think that Deandra is that keen on her senses. Or even like the final interrogation scene where she drops a tear and everything like that. Her portrayals, Regina Hall's portrayals, are always so gentle yet piercing to the heart. And it kind of like, I akin them to like a touch on the shoulder. Like I feel like a touch on the shoulder. Like how some performances like gut punches, and then some are like slaps to the faces, and some are like stabs. Some of them hurt like to watch somebody perform sometimes. But I feel like with Regina Hall, it's always like she's touching you on the shoulder, meaning that like it's felt, it's firm, but it always is like it's touching on the shoulder, but it's felt in your heart as well. It's a lot of emotionality put into subtle gestures, in my opinion, and she's conveying that properly here. And I think like the film allows for that to occur as well. So that just aids my point in saying that like Paul Thomas Anderson, the relationship he builds between his actors and his characters, is something that I believe he's passionate about, and it's seen on screen. And this film is a pure example of that. The last thing that I think Paul Thomas Anderson is like extremely passionate about is like fatherhood. The relationship with Bob and Willa in this film is like the shoelace to the shoe of this film, in my opinion, where it's like it's not present like immediately at the toe tip of the story, but it intertwines itself throughout the tongue of the story up until like the bow is fully woven and ties shut at the end of the story. I did find moments where they're like rekindling at the end of the film after Willa takes out the Christmas Adventurers henchman, and then she has to make that decision where she's holding the gun at Bob on whether like she trusts Bob, first of all, but second of all, whether she accepts Bob as like her true father. I really, really like that scene. It really touched me. Even though I do think there are a few other moments in this film between Bob and Willa, which I thought were not as pleasing, I should say, for lack of a better term, i.e. like the they them conversation scene, or even like the scene where like all the scenes where Bob is trying to talk about like how he's a failure to Willa, like things like that, they just didn't really hit for me, which brings us over to the things that I didn't really care about when it came to this film. I just spoke about all the things that I think Paul Thomas Anderson is passionate about and how his passion for those things allow him to execute those things so well. But I think there's also things that Paul Thomas Anderson is not passionate about, and I think that his lack of passion for certain things prevents him from executing well or even like justly. What's the first thing on the list there? I think like the only thing on the list, the main thing on the list here, when I talk about things that he's not passionate about, that he doesn't execute well, is race. One Battle After Another is like a very popular and known film, I would say, at least to the average moviegoer. And that makes sense given its praise and its buzz that it's received over the past year, as well as the star power that's at the forefront of the film. However, this is like a first for Paul Thomas Anderson. I believe One Battle After Another is Paul Thomas Anderson's highest grossing film ever, but it's also his most marketed film ever. He's never had a film that's been backed this much by like, the industry, in my opinion. And now that's not the only anomaly with One Battle After Another for Paul Thomas Anderson. I think the second biggest anomaly with this film is that it's his only film that tries to center Black characters and Black niche experiences at the forefront of it, i.e. like the plight of existing under racism and like the effects of white supremacy. But there were definitely missteps made here in regards to the execution or pursuit of such a storytelling. The first one on my list is the characterization of Black women. We could just go ahead and start with Perfidia Beverly Hills, right? So like Perfidia Beverly Hills is a Black revolutionary made in the essence of Assata Shakur, allegedly, who does nothing but blow up banks without reason, sure, constantly spouts comments that metaphorically throw her vagina in your face, adamantly gets her body parts groped while committing revolutionary acts, has a fetish / race play affair with like the top of the line white supremacists in like the part of the country. And then she sells out the entire revolutionary movement she's devoted her whole entire life to, and causes them to all be assassinated except for her white boyfriend, Ghetto Pat. And then she flees the country to get lone, solitary, and safety after all of that, which is a depiction of a Black woman revolutionary that is just not going to be perceived well by like any Black person who's just like socially conscious, or just like the Black community in general, because it shouldn't be. Perfidia Beverly Hills is not a well-rounded character. We don't know where Perfidia Beverly Hills comes from. We don't know what Perfidia's goals are. We don't know how Perfidia actually is going about her resistance tactics, whether they're morally inclined or not. We don't know who Perfidia is threatening over these phone calls. But everything we do know about Perfidia in this film are things that are extremely questionable and unfavorable, in my opinion. It's like all the things that I just listed, as well as like her constant comments insinuating that she's like this very intrigue with white men being attracted to her, and then like her rejection to her daughter, all of those scenes, and then we have like murdering of the Black cop and the layers that come with that, and I don't even want to get into right now. Everything I just said just like piles on top of each other to being very distasteful, in my opinion. Now, people who love this film will retort what I just said about Perfidia Beverly Hills and be like, oh, you just want your Black women characters to be perfect. You don't like to see complex Black women characters on screen. That is not true. I watch complex Black women characters all the time. I've grown up on complex Black women characters. I've grown up on flawed Black women characters. I've seen flawed Black women in my entire life. That's not what I want here. But here, what I do want is a inline depiction of Black women, especially Black women revolutionaries, especially because it's being made by a white man, Paul Thomas Anderson. This film is not being told from a Black lens. It's not being told from a Black man or a Black woman or anyone who is Black. It's being told by a white man. So I have to squint because we have to question what the perception of Black liberation and Black radicalism and Black revolutionary acts are when someone is being heralded as like a film god for their film telling such a story. No. And Perfidia Beverly Hills is not even my only like piece of evidence in regards to the mischaracterization of Black women, or like the ill characterization of Black women, I should say here. We can go ahead and go into Regina Hall's character, Deandra here, who is, probably like the most conscious character within this film, but she's like barely seen. Every time Deandra is on screen, she's giving like greatness. Like I think everything about the complexity and the layers to her character that aren't fleshed out here, but are felt in such a small amount of time, are, just like done away with every time like the screen time for Regina Hall hits like 60 seconds, in my opinion, which is very odd to me. There are dynamics in this film with Deandra that I personally felt would have been very apt for such a depiction of black women people claim Paul Thomas Anderson is conveying through this film. You have these moments and dynamics between like Deandra and Bob, which are like very minute, but they are very loaded. We never get that fleshed out between them. And then you have these moments between Deandra and Perfidia, which is a dynamic we really never get fleshed out at all. I think that they share like literally like one scene of dialogue together. I think it's like literally like 2 lines. Yet those 2 dynamics are not even fleshed out here at all in this film to any degree, because Paul Thomas Anderson is just like not focused on Deandra. I don't think Deandra is an important figure in Paul Thomas Anderson's mind. You have to wonder, why is a character so complex and so intricate and so loaded and so powerful as Deandra just gone unseen, yet Perfidia Beverly Hills, who is just like so like almost one note to a certain extent, is just so prominent in this film, right? And then we could pivot one more time here where we look at Chase Infinity, who is playing like the least black woman in this film and being propped up as like the new hope for racial justice in America here, which I think is odd given that all of like the full black women in this film and dark-skinned women in this film are like murdered. They're killed either by like, you know, the military or by like at the behest of Perfidia Beverly Hills, who was like one of their own. And it's odd because like I think like when you're demonizing or like you're silencing all of these other prominent, very blunt depictions of black women, and then like, you know, the biracial girl gets to be like the hope for justice in America, it's very like, it's very squinty. It's like, Now, people will retort in regards to my, you know, issue with how Willa, the character Willa, is portrayed or positioned in this film, with that, like, you know, Willa is based on Paul Thomas Anderson's daughters, and he's imbued Willa with a lot of things that he sees in his daughters. But in my opinion, I have to like, you know, call BS on that, because Paul Thomas Anderson's daughters are not like half black. Once they're like a quarter black, but 2, they don't live in the world as black girls. So like there's nothing that Paul Thomas Anderson could have taken from his daughters and imbued into Willa outside of them just being like daughters. He could have imbued that into him, but even then, that's not even the dynamic that's being present here between Willa and Bob. And then some people will retort that and be like, oh, well, he's utilizing Maya Rudolph, his wife's experience with her dad, because she's a biracial black girl. And her dad said things to her, like, as Bob says about Will in the film, where like, oh, I can't do my daughter's hair, things like that. And in my opinion, I'd be like, okay, yeah, he did utilize Maya Rudolph's experience, but at the same time, it's like, what? Like, I'm supposed to think that commentary on like white men not knowing how to do their black daughter's hair is like profound, or like, you know, just depiction of black women, because that's not how black women live life. Usually, like, they don't have to worry about their fathers not knowing how to do their hair, like, or their mothers not knowing how to do their hair usually in their life. I also just think, like, side note, tangent, where like this film is based in the 2020s, like in the year 2026, it's not endearing for a man to be like, I don't know how to do my daughter's hair. Go to YouTube, ask somebody, go on Google, find somebody who can do your daughter's hair. I don't know, but it's kind of pathetic to not be able to do your child's hair. I don't care who you are, what your race is, or what your child's hair texture is. Learn how to do it. I say all that to say that, in my opinion, there was just an obvious arrogance in the air here when it came to the writing in this film, and the aspects of the screenplay surrounding like black women in this film, like, just like, kind of suck in my opinion. They do. Sorry. We can just go ahead and move on to the next thing there in regards to race that kind of sucks in this film, the depiction of white supremacy in this film. This film uses like hollow depictions of Mexican American and immigrant experiences in America that are present within today's cultural landscape, i.e. The mistreatment of immigrants held in detention centers and ICE agents on everyday streets nowadays, to prop itself up as this like socially conscious commentary on today's politics, yet it like stops its accuracy in depictions right before it has to actually like make an indictment of today's actual oppressors, i.e. the military and the Klan, who are seen in this film. Yes, we're at ICE immigration centers in this film, but no one at such horrid facilities or experiencing such horrid experiences are given a face here. The only faces that are given to characters in this lane of the storytelling within this film are the military generals, who are using this film to either like, 1, be comedic relief, or 2, to demonize like protesting against like military in general, which like furthers just like indirect like positive propaganda to some figures. And you might be like, what is indirect positive about it? When you utilize like you know, figures that are not good for comedic relief, you are allowing like for the perception of such characters to be like shunned off the back of people, meaning that like people don't have to actually attach like strict hard morals to these peoples that are like bad, that are negative. They get to like get relief. Like you get to laugh at Stephen Lockjaw, you get to laugh at his military battalion, you get to laugh at when they're interrogating the teenagers, because like it's not that serious, right? None of it's really that serious, right? And so it's like an indirect positive propaganda, in my opinion. And it's like, also, we're not caring for like the true victims in this situation at all, and you don't give them a face. I think the only person here who's given a face who is of the Mexican American experience in this film is the character of Sensei Sergio, played by Benicio del Toro. Now, people will retort what I just said about the film not really, having a strong opinion on white supremacy in regards to the Mexican American experience by saying like Benicio del Toro's plot lines are proof that PTA had like apt mental thought in regards to like the current Mexican American and like immigration experience in America. But there's like a reason I did not speak on Sensei Sergio when I just said about how I think like all of the actor to character portrayals were executed well, like very well here. I think the screenplay surrounding the character of Sensei like sucks as well. People give the twirl scene a lot. They give the twirl scene and the how many beers have you been drinking tonight? I had a couple beers line like so much when it comes to this character, and to me that's like very pathetic. Especially when you look back on like the whole entire supporting actor race for the previous like award season, because that character is more than just comedic relief. Like you obviously know this character has more going for him outside of like comedic relief, yet like the only buzzy conversation we can walk away from this film with in regards to him is like satirical lollygagging. Bringing me to my next point in this regard, where we have like the Christmas Adventurers Club here, who are depicted in this film in such like a satirical comedic relief manner, when they're literally like symbolizing like the highest hands of the clan in America in today's time, like literally into 2025. And it's like such a cop-out in my opinion, because like Paul Thomas Anderson knows the people who are coming to see his films, who are majority like white liberals or moderates or centrists, are going to be seeing such storylines or such characters being depicted on screen, and they're going to be like waiting for a moment to like not have to like feel bad. Like they're waiting for a moment for like Paul Thomas Anderson to give them out of feeling bad about like, being white people in America and benefiting from white supremacy, because that is what happens. You are the beneficiary of this. As you can see in this film, Bob is unharmed in this film, right? And it's like grade A, like millennial fatigue product in my opinion. And I say millennial fatigue because like Paul Thomas Anderson is a millennial, I believe. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's like a little bit, how old is Paul Thomas Anderson? Hold on. Okay, Paul Thomas Anderson is not a millennial, but he makes films for millennials, i.e. this film, where like all the parents and adults in this film are millennials in my opinion. Bob Ferguson is a millennial in my opinion in this film. And what I say when I say like grade A millennial fatigue product, I mean that like millennials, they prided themselves on being like this very, progressive and like morally inclined generation. However, there always comes a point with millennials where like they can't do too much of that. It's always like, let's just do 8 hours of being morally inclined today, and then the rest of the other 12 hours of the day that we can just lollygag and not have to care about anything. It's always like, let's get a break. Can we get a break? Can we catch a break here, please? We're trying to be great. Can we catch a break here with millennials? And so that is what like this film kind of feels like it's responding to a certain extent, which I don't like, because film is like a historically like it's a platform for messaging. It's a platform for messaging. And in this film, we're trying to do political messaging. So are we giving people outs, right? This is like not Don't Be a Menace. This is not like Scary Movie. Like this is not Django. Like these are not films where like the point of the film is to be satirical and comedic relief. I know that this film tried to get off of being like considered a comedy, cough, cough, so it can get a Best Picture win, cough, cough, it worked. But that's not what this film is. I watched this film 3 times. This film is not a comedy. It's not a comedy at all. And so I'm just not buying that. Not to mention, none of the Christmas Adventure Club members are seen again after they put the hit out on Willa and Lockjaw. Not to mention, they live in these like wonderful, lavish mansion compounds with bunkers galore. Not to mention, heartthrob Tony Goldwyn is here being the face of their group and indirectly pulling on the appeal to the audience, which would have been great if it actually had made a statement that's like that downs the depiction of these people or who these people are in the real world, because It kind of just like wanes on this idea that like, oh, we don't have to say racist people are bad. People just know racist people are bad. People don't really know racist people are bad. People don't think racist people are bad. They just don't. So like, if you're gonna take this up and try to make a screenplay surrounding like racial aspects in America, you need to execute it to a level where like, you know, it hits it on the head properly, or else I'm gonna say, I think the screenplay in regards to the racial aspects of this film suck. Overall, I think the social consciousness within this film is like low, which is bad when the premise of this film is like fighting the power and like looking to instill like the newer generation with like ambition and cultural progressivism, which is like the idea that most critics have taken from this film after seeing it. They're like, oh my gosh, it's like he's really just trying to like imbue like the younger generation, or he's really just trying to say like, we got to leave it to the kids. The kids are going to change the world. And my thing about that is like, Paul Thomas Anderson, you're only in your 50s. Like, y'all can still change the world. Y'all are the people with power. I hate when adults be like, the kids are going to change the world. No, baby, you change the world and leave us with a better world, please. Like, I'm an adult now. I'm never going to say my little cousins, Generation Gen Alpha, are going to change the world. I need to be changing the world for them. No? Like, can we do away with that? Which brings me to the other critique in regards to this film that I don't really hold, but I don't understand why people are pushing back on. What do I mean? I'm talking about the critiques that people are like, Paul Thomas Anderson like needs to speak on this film. PTA bros, like the people who like are obsessed with Paul Thomas Anderson online, have been saying that like Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't have to answer any questions in regards to this film. This is the answer for his art. They've been going with the idea where like you like an artist must not defend their art to like the masses. That whole like idea. I don't know who coined that term, but it's a term out there. And in my opinion, I'm like, why shouldn't he have to answer questions about his art? Outside of like 4 editorial interviews in the award stage, Paul Thomas Anderson hasn't really spoken on this film unless behind closed doors for like private screenings. And I'm pretty sure that the questions that are being pitched to him in these private screenings are not questions that are going to require Paul Thomas Anderson to think about this film in ways that he has not already thought about before. And so he did this interview with The Talks as well, where he said that he gets really bored having to depict political stories for too long. And that's like very evident here based on everything that I just said. And so when his fans say like we can't critique him or ask him like critical questions about his film, he doesn't have to respond to that. I'm like, what is your like actual stance on like critiquing a film then? Because like critiquing a film requires like inspection of the film, and inspection of a film requires like questioning of a film. And if I can't question anything about a film or about somebody who created the film, then I can't inspect. If I can't inspect, I can't critique. And so then critique a film is just gone away. And so you don't get to herald somebody as like the god of film. Like this is what people have just been saying. Like PTA bros have just finally gotten their chance in the past year to really just be like, Paul Thomas Anderson's so underrated. Like he's finally getting his like flowers for being like the god of film, a film god, and being like the biggest auteur, like film creator that we know of today. And he's so underrated. That's why. So if he's so underrated, why can't he show us why he's underrated? Why does he just get to be silent? Every single underrated person just not say like just prove why they aren't underrated. In this film, I'm sorry, it's not proving why he's like underrated. Because there's some things to underrate in this film. He can defend his films. Paul Thomas Anderson can very much defend his films. Now, is it smart for him to? Well, in my opinion, if Paul Thomas Anderson knows that what he's going to say in response to any questions regarding like the political aspects of this film are going to sound stupid to the public, then I guess if I was his publicist, I would be like, it's smart that you don't say anything. So on his part, that's fine. But on his fans' part, why would you go around saying like people don't have to talk about their film or like just like answer to their film? Like people do that all the time, but he doesn't. I get that he's like seasoned, but like at the same time you're saying he's underrated because like nobody knows who Paul Thomas Anderson is. I can go down the street right now and be like, hey, do you know who Paul Thomas Anderson is, to like 20 people, and they won't say they know who he is. But if I say like, do you know who Christopher Nolan is, do you know who Martin Scorsese is, people will be like, oh yeah, because they have much more notable films than Paul Thomas Anderson does. So he does have to speak. Like your work does have to talk for you at some point, no? What are some technical thoughts that I had on this film? I think like the technicality of this film is great. Like I think this film did get editing. Like I think this film did get like best editing at the Oscars, which I'm not mad about. I think all the points of movement within this film are done very well. When they're like fleeing the city after the bank robbery, which I think is my favorite sequence. Yeah, I think when they're fleeing the scene for the bank robbery in downtown after Perfidious shoots the cop, I think that's my favorite sequence in this film. Every time I watch that film, that's the scene where I'm like gagging a little bit. Like I'm like, whoa, this is like really good. This is like really good action sequence stuff right here, bro. And then also when like fleeing the high school, when like Deandra and Willow are running from the high school, or when like you have the rooftop jumping sequence, that was very cool. That was actually like the one time I laughed when I first saw it in theaters, when they were hopping from roof to roof and like Bob actually falls way down to the ground. That was very funny to me. The lockjaw infiltration of the nunnery, I think that whole sequence of movement was great. I also think that the car door movement scenes with Willow when she's being like taken to like that like off-site execution camp, I should say, for lack of a better term, was great. And then the whole entire third act car chase scene, stellar. Which also brings me to like score and sound thoughts. I thought like all the moments of silence in this film were great. And when I say silence, I don't mean like nothing's happening in your ear, but I mean there's a lot of drowned out, or like I would say like focused on sounds in this film. So when you have like that whole escape scene from downtown when they're fleeing from after the bank robbery, like they take out all the background noise and all you hear is just like all the forefront noise. So you hear like the tires on the street, the engine revving, you hear like people breathing, you hear like the footsteps running on the street, you hear the crash, the glass shatter when they crash, but you don't hear like things in the background. Like if you were closing your eyes and you were watching it, like you really would just be like, you would think that like it was shot in like a city. I don't know why I just closed my eyes right there. I was trying to re-envision the whole scene because it's so good that way. I can just like close my eyes and re-envision like that whole scene. Like that's masterful work. That's what I'll give PTA praise for. You see, but you could like close your eyes and just like literally, if you just were blindly going into hearing that scene, you'd be like, oh, it's like an apocalypse happened. Like this is this set in like an apocalypse? Because like there's like nothing happening in the background. I thought that was great. Also, obviously, like the needle drop in the second act when we're first introduced to Chase Infinity as Willa. I think everybody walks away. I think that's like probably the most notable sound score moment in this film because it is that good. That is a great needle drop. And then the entire like third act car chase scene where you just hear like the engine and you just hear everybody breathing. That was great as well. Overall, like, do I want to give a number rating on this film? I don't think I want to give a number rating on this film. I think when you do like start doing number ratings, like you kind of get a little too murky. But like, I am a wannabe cinephile, right? What I will say is that like I'm not high on this film, but I'm not low on this film at all. This film is good. This film is good. Now, if somebody said this film is bad, I'm not going to fight them on it. Touche. You do you. Now, if somebody says this film is perfect, I'm going to be like, no, it is not. But if somebody's like, this film is very good, I'm going to be like, I can let that slide. But for me, I'm like, this film is just good. So, after having seen One Battle After Another last September with my friends while I was visiting one of my friends for his birthday in LA, the conflicting feelings I had in regards to One Battle After Another made me feel the need to like tap into Paul Thomas Anderson's like full filmography for the purpose of being like well-versed cinephile, right? But more importantly, like to deduce whether like or not Paul Thomas Anderson is actually like a consistently flawed director and like this whole like auteur director praise he was consistently receiving during like the whole One Battle After Another like award season, positioning him as like this like god of film was like either like pure conjecture and lies being fed to the masses so like he could finally snag his like Oscar, which he got, or whether everybody was being like, you know, truthful and being like, yeah, this guy really is like a film god. And to my surprise, the praise was justified. So let's get into my thoughts on Paul Thomas Anderson's featured films and rank them based on my personal perceptions of them. So after binge watching all of Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography from my couch, I found that there's about like 5 core Paul Thomas Anderson film attributes. What are those in my mind? I think the first one is definitely like it's set in California. The second would be like speaking on malfeasance within the American society. The third one would be the through line of fatherhood. The fourth one would be sexuality and nudity. And I think the fifth one would definitely be like the protagonists get their day in the sun at the end of the story. So given all those attributes that I just identified, those are kind of what I use to like rank all of his films, like based on how well they execute those 5 core Paul Thomas Anderson attributes. And we can just go ahead and jump right into the ranking. Coming in at number 10, we have Inherent Vice. Inherent Vice is a film that I found to be Paul Thomas Anderson's worst film. Inherent Vice follows a detective played by Joaquin Phoenix who is on a mission to solve a case involving his current fling, attorney ex-girlfriend, as well as many other people in his life, such as his best friend played by Josh Brolin. What are my main takeaways from Inherent Vice? This film just felt like PTA slop to me. It's coming off the back of The Master, and it feels like PTA still had some of like the Master energy in his gas tank, and he wanted like to clear the tank out before like he like completely moved on to another new project, and he just made this film. It's the only film of his when I binge watched them all that I felt like was dragging like from start to finish. Now, like, why would I say that? Well, I'm not really a fan of Joaquin Phoenix, right? Joaquin Phoenix is very hit or miss for me. I think my favorite performance by Joaquin Phoenix is Gladiator. And I just think like Joaquin Phoenix's like, or just like in general, method acting is just not really something that I'm fond of. I think when I see people take on characters to like the ultimate extent, it just really like dulls my experience in viewing whatever is going on. I think it's very try hard to me. Like method acting is very try hard to me. I'm trying to think if there's somebody who does method acting that like is not that try hard to me. Nobody's coming to mind right now, so Joaquin's just gonna have to get these lashings. And I think of all the Paul Thomas Anderson muses in his films, I think Joaquin Phoenix is like my least favorite muse of his. And so when it comes to like the core five attributes of his filmography, in my opinion, I don't think that this film is doing the justice by being set in California. I don't really think California is like very much a character in this film to a certain extent, even though it is giving like California vibes. It's like very much just like, oh, we're in California, but I don't feel like California is really a part of this film, not like the other ones at least. When it's speaking on the malfeasance in American society, I didn't really care for it. The through line surrounding fatherhood, not present here. Maybe I missed that, but like I do not see any fatherhood storylines going on here for real. Maybe I did miss that, but if I did miss that and you're like screaming at me through the screen right now and you're a PTA bro, just know I'm not fond of this film at all, and I don't think most people are. And I don't think anybody would care if I didn't remember every plot in Inherent Vice, right? I am a wannabe cinephile, please remember that. The sexuality and nudity here is like so flung at us. Like it's flung at us so, it's so, I don't want to say lazily, but it's like flung at us without as much care as the other films, in my opinion. So that was a thumbs down on as well. And I think the protagonist getting their ending in the sun in this film was just so dull. Like, it was so dull. Like, I don't even care if y'all have a happy life or if all of y'all have a miserable life. Like, so it's just thumbs down on everything in regards to this film. Apologies. Moving on. At number 9, we have Licorice Pizza. So Licorice Pizza is a film that I found to be like so close to greatness. Like, it was so close to greatness, yet it like never gets there. And like we end up just like falling down to being like just fine. Like, it's just fine film. This is like PTA's only high school drama, and it follows the young adult Alana Kane, played by Alana Haim, as she navigates young adulthood and engages in like this like romance with this local high schooler, Gary Valentine, played by Cooper Hoffman, who has big plans for himself in terms of like being an entrepreneur and providing for the ones he loves in his life. Where Inherent Vice is PTA's like bad film, like his only bad film. Like, I think the only film of Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography that I would be like is bad is Inherent Vice. I think Licorice Pizza is Paul Thomas Anderson's only like perfectly fine film in my eyes. After Licorice Pizza, everything I'm very high on. Everything I'm high on, not very high. After Licorice Pizza, everything else I'm high on. So what do I like about this film? I found like Southern California suburban hood as a setting here to be very close to my heart and very touching. It's very nostalgic because I did grow up in Southern California, so that was nice to see. I also felt like the running in this film is great. I think Paul Thomas Anderson, as I just said, with One Battle After Another, he is great at depicting like movement, like action sequences to a certain extent. And in this film, all the running scenes where they're running on the sidewalks, but I think in the third act where Gary and Alana are running towards each other to reconcile, was great. I am also very fond of Cooper Hoffman, so seeing him here was great. Now, I do like Cooper Hoffman as an actor. I don't know if I like Cooper Hoffman's film choices, but we can talk about that in another video. It's not enough time here to do that. Benny Safdie's subplot in this film is also great. I think this is the only thing in this film that I actually genuinely think is great. The dinner table scene in the third act with Benny Safdie's character and his romance or his love interest in this film, who is a man, it hit me so randomly, but it was so potent and it was so strong, and it made so much sense given what we had seen of this character in the first act of this film. And it also made me question, like, why didn't Paul Thomas Anderson make like Licorice Pizza his like first film where he like finally engages with homosexuality like full on. There's like so many other subplots and like side plots in this film that are like of no value to the overarching story for Alana or Gary. Yet Paul Thomas Anderson didn't want to lean into this subplot more with like Benny Safdie's character, and it has like even more like potential for like adding to like the overarching storyline than all those other random subplots did, which like also makes me wonder like what are like Paul Thomas Anderson has so many limitations to his storytelling. Like One Battle After Another and Licorice Pizza is showing me like his storytelling has limitations. And honestly, it's interesting because these One Battle After Another and Licorice Pizza are Paul Thomas Anderson's two films that are done in this decade. And so it's kind of showing me like, is Paul Thomas Anderson like not able to really like shift with the times? Like, is the 2020s like kind of like hard for Paul Thomas Anderson to really like convey a story that like really like just like hits? Who knows? If his next film that he makes is in this decade, and I feel the exact same way that there was limitations in regards to like what he can portray in regards to like writing, then like I think this is gonna solidify my opinion that like he kind of is like not who he was anymore in this decade. So my biggest issues with this film, I think Alana Haim as like his muse, like is kind of like maybe my biggest issue with this film. I find like Gwyneth Paltrow, Julianne Moore, Tiana Taylor, Chase Affinity to all be like better, more interesting, alluring muses, women muses of Paul Thomas Anderson than Alana Haim. But I do think Alana Haim is more interesting than like Amy Adams was in The Master or like Reese Witherspoon was in Inherent Vice. So she has like some legs here in my mind, but she's not like at the top of the list. So like she kind of like downed my excitement for like, you know, my amusement, I would say, for like the character I'm watching on screen was not as high as I wanted it to be. There's also just too much going on in the second act of this film. Sean Penn is here for no reason, in my opinion. Bradley Cooper is here. He's kind of cool, but like he's also still here for no reason, in my opinion. The pump fake sex scene on the mattress with Alana and Gary, like, it's like another example like why I'm saying like Paul Thomas Anderson needs to focus on stories that he like actually is passionate about going forward, because like the messaging here between this like age gap relationship, like he doesn't know how to allow for us to not think about the age gap going on here. And if you're gonna do an age gap relationship and you're gonna try to portray it to Gen Z people, because this film came out in 2021, he was trying to get all the college students to go out and see this film, in my opinion. And so if you're gonna try to get like Gen Z to like, you know, be enthralled with your storytelling, make it for Gen Z, and like, baby, we cannot compartmentalize this the way that you're doing it. So that was kind of like a failing on it as well. I think another thing was like all the Israeli and IDF praise in this film, like blank stare, like just complete blank stare from me on that. So when it comes to the five like core PTA film attributes, set in California, I thought it did very well. The malfeasance in American society, I thought it did okay. The through line surrounding fatherhood, I don't think it executed that well. I don't find Alana's father endearing here, and I don't think any of the male figures in this film are actually that endearing. If we gave more time to Benny Safdie's character and showed that more mentorship relationship between Alana and Benny Safdie's character, maybe we could have gotten there, but we didn't. The sexuality and nudity in this film is kind of non-existent, which makes sense. It's a high school film, even though like there's like directors who don't have that line there, but I think like there's already too much going on here that like Paul Thomas Anderson didn't have time to add like sex scenes on top of it, which there kind of is a sex scene here, but not a real sex scene here. And then the protagonist getting their ending in the sun, that was successful here as well. So, you know, it's like a 3 out of 5 here when it comes to the core attributes, but like everything else is like 4 out of 5. So we're just going to leave Licorice Pizza at number 9 and move on. Coming in at number 8, we have Hard 8. No pun intended. So Hard 8 was a film that I found to be like extremely underrated in regards to like PTA's filmography. This was like the last film of PTA's that I had watched after like seeing the ratings were like less enthusiastic towards it than the other films. And I went to the film streets and people were like they weren't like vibing with it. Like in the film streets, people were like not liking this film. So I was like, maybe I should just save it for last so that I don't have to waste my time, because I already had gone through Inherent Vice, like I think second, and I was like, ooh, I can't do another one of those. But to my surprise, Hard Eight is a really, really good film. And like, if you don't think Hard Eight is a good film, like, you just don't get it, in my opinion. Like, you just don't get it. Like, this film is so good. So Hard Eight follows a veteran gambler, Sidney, played by Philip Baker Hall, who works the Florida casino and takes in a young man named John, played by John C. Reilly, under his wing, along with a young man, that same young man's prostitute girlfriend, Clementine, played by Gwyneth Paltrow. And then like drama ensues, and you begin to realize that the connections between Sydney and John are messier than you once thought. In this film, I thought all the actors were great. I think Philip Baker Hall is great. I think John C. Reilly is great. I think Gwyneth Paltrow is great. I think Samuel L. Jackson is doing what he needed to be doing. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman is doing what he needed to be doing. My favorite scenes in this film is definitely like the hotel room scene with the captive with Philip Seymour Hoffman handcuffed to the bed. That scene was just like very absurd, and I was like, I was genuinely laughing. I wasn't supposed to be laughing at that scene. I think also the scene where Sydney is waiting in Jimmy's house for Jimmy to get back, and so he can like get the drop on him. Perfect, great. And I also think like the phone booth scene is like so magical. Like the phone booth scene really touched my heart. Like it really did, because like he's really his father, y'all. Like Sydney is really John's father, but he's not, and he took his father away from him. But he is his father. It's just like it's so complex, but it's so good in my opinion. And I just feel it has like a very like unique way of subverting like all of PTA's like core attributes in this film. Like it's not set in California, but it doesn't matter. It's great regardless. And then also like there's like malfeasance in American society spoken on here, and that's great as well. The through line for surrounding fatherhood, one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best fatherhood storytellings that Paul Thomas Anderson has done in his filmography. Is sexuality and nudity here? No, not really, but that's fine. And then like the protagonists get their ending in the sun. They do get their ending in the sun, and the evil Jimmy is defeated. It's so good. I have nothing bad to say about Hard Eight. If you don't like Hard Eight, like, you gotta leave the channel. You gotta leave the channel right now. You gotta stop the video. You gotta walk away. At number 7, we have Boogie Nights. So, Boogie Nights is a film that I found to be like PTA's most fun film. Boogie Nights follows a group of adult performers who dwell under the mentorship and within the household of a veteran adult film producer, Jack Horner, in the San Fernando Valley of California during the late 70s and early 80s. What do I like about this film? I think this film has a stellar cast, as I think every Paul Thomas Anderson film like going on from here does. It's like I think it's Paul Thomas Anderson's true ensemble film. So you have Mark Wahlberg here who's playing Eddie, great. You have Julianne Moore here who's playing Amber, great. You have Burt Reynolds here who's playing Jack, great. You have John C. Reilly here who's playing Reed, great. You have John Cheadle here who's playing Buck, great. You have Philip Seymour Hoffman here who's playing Scotty, great. You have William H. Macy here who's playing Little Bill, great. You have Nicole Ari Parker here who's playing Becky, great. You have Louise Guzman here who's playing Maurice, great. You have Heather Graham here who's playing Roller Girl, great. Like it's just a true ensemble film. And all these characters that I just listed, they all have like full storylines. Like they all feel like fully like fleshed out characters. Like I think this is like his like if I was to give this like something over all the other films, this is true ensemble film. And we spend like an abundance of time with these characters, which I love. And then like it's just a feel-good film at the same time. And it also is covering like you know, a topic that's very like sensitive, where it's like adult performers in American society. And I think in the sex positive zeitgeist that we live in right now, this film like, you know, is even more meaningful than before in my opinion. And I don't really have any like issues with this film, if I'm being honest. When it comes to like the core 5 attributes, I think like it's set in California like perfectly. All like the backyard pool culture is great in this film, and then like it's a great night film. It's a lot of night shots going on in this film, and I think that's great too, because California nights are like very nice as well. It speaks to the malfeasance in American society as well, and how society like restricts sex workers from having like a fair lifestyle and having like freedom to exist without like persecution due to their like profession in this country, where like their profession is like I would say consumed at a mass rate by most people. It also like has a through line surrounding fatherhood, where like Jack Horner here, he's the character played by Burt Reynolds. He's like the father to everyone who is a part of this ensemble, and like they're in his house, and it like functions. The storyline just functions through his fatherhood in a sense, in my opinion. And even the sexuality and nudity, where I think this is the most nudity, I would say, in a film. It's like his most nude film to date, I believe, and like the sex is like a character in this film as well. So like he hits that over the head, great. And the protagonists, they get their day in the sun. Like everybody sticks together at the end of this film. They're a true family. You may ask like, why am I so high on all of this stuff? And it's coming in at number 7. Well, this film does commit like the cardinal sin for me in film, and what is that? That is like the utilization of prosthetic penises. If you utilize, come closer. If you utilize a prosthetic penis in film, I will not like your film, or I will think your film, I'll just deduct a lot of points from your film. I will like your film because I still like Boogie Nights, but I will deduct a lot of points from your film. Okay, I'm gonna back up. So yes, this film, like it ends on like the most like a soul-irking scene for me, where like Wahlberg's character like just like hangs out his like penis, and it's like fake. It's like fake. And to me, it just like really, really like eats me up. And if you saw my like Sorry Baby film, like a video, you know that like I have a real issue with like this thing in film where like cock shame is like a thing, like where like male actors like don't feel like they can show their flaccid penis, and it's just like really confusing to me because like, in my opinion, it's like either hire somebody who has like a schlong who's hung like to the gods to the floor, or like don't like make it a big thing if you want like the character to portray such a thing. And also like if you're gonna act and be in a film about pornography, maybe be ready to be nude. I don't know. It's a pet peeve of mine. That's why it's gonna come in at 7. Moving on. At number 6, we have, which might be a little controversial, so don't get mad at me, but at number 6, we have The Master. Okay, so The Master is a film that I found to be like masterful, no pun intended, in craft. But it's like more like it's like a diamond in a ring masterful, but like at the end of the day, like there's like nothing sparkly about it, in my opinion. It's like a random diamond ring that you see like when you're walking through like Macy's or like Nordstrom, right? Where like, you know, like that's like a real diamond. Like, you know, it's a real diamond. Or maybe like, let me give it more like pizzazz to it. Like you're at Belova and you see like that diamond ring, right? And you're like, oh, that's like a real diamond ring. It's cut properly. It's fine cut. It's just perfect. But it's like, I don't want it. Like, it's not attractive to me. It's not appealing to me like that. And that's how The Master felt. The Master follows a World War II veteran who, after a series of ridiculous actions, crosses paths with a cult leader and willingly entangles himself with all nonsense, crime, and debauchery that occurs within their cult environment. My main takeaways from this film: it's written very well. It displays the dynamics that come from the pursuit of power from men and everything that follows that, and how contagious such a pursuit is for like the weak and vulnerable of our society, but also like for other men who are weak and vulnerable usually. The acting is very good as well. Philip Seymour Hoffman is amazing in this film as Dodd. And like, I love Philip Seymour Hoffman, but for some reason, like, this is not my favorite Philip Seymour Hoffman performance in a Paul Thomas Anderson film. And he's like literally the lead actor here. So like, you know, like there's just something off about this film and I can't really get like my finger on. Like, I can't really get my finger on, but Philip Seymour Hoffman is amazing in this film. Joaquin Phoenix, he's doing good in this film as well. Amy Adams, she's doing well in this film as well. Even though like there's a few like weird scenes with her, but like, oh well, I'm gonna overlook it. Jesse Plemons doing well in this scene in this film as well. The production design is on point, and the score is on point, and the cinematography is great. I think this is the best like shot film by Paul Thomas Anderson. Am I ready to say that? I think this is the highest quality of shooting Paul Thomas Anderson has done in his entire filmography. Like, I think the level of cinematography in this film is the highest of quality that any film in Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography has ever been at. Like, when I'm watching it, I'm like, wow, that's clear as hell. I'm like, wow, that's really pretty. I'm like, wow, that's like a very defined shot. I'm like, wow, they look very pristine. I'm like, wow, this looks very real. Like, the cinematography is a character to a certain extent in this film, which I thought was great. My main points of contention with this film, as I already told you, Joaquin Phoenix is very hit or miss for me here. Did he hit? I don't really think so. He's doing this like method acting, like creepiness thing here, but like everybody in this film is like very creepy because it's like about a cult. So like he's really like doing nothing for me here. I also like have no idea what Paul Thomas Anderson was doing with like the women characters in this film. Amy Adams like hasn't really like, it's like Amy Adams hasn't been able to catch a break since Arrival, and like This was before Arrival, I believe, so like she was catching a break then, but like me having not seen this film until after I saw Arrival, I'm like, dang, Amy, like you can't catch a break, girl. Like what the hell? When it comes to the core five attributes of a PTA film, is it set in California well? Yes. Malfeasance in American society is done well? Yes. The through line surrounding fatherhood done well? Not really. I don't really care about the fatherhood storyline here. Sexuality and nudity. There is a lot of sexuality and nudity here. I did think it's like executed okay. And the protagonists get their ending in the sun. I guess they do. I guess he gets his ending in the sun, but not really. Like he tries to recreate being a cult leader, but like he just doesn't have that pizzazz to him. He doesn't have that like that swag to him. So like you can't do that. You're not going to be as successful as Philip Seymour Hoffman's character here because you're just like an imbecile as you were at the beginning of the film. So no. But moving on. At number 5, we have a film I already spoke about today, One Battle After Another. So with One Battle After Another, I believe this film is nowhere near like PTA's bottom, right? Like even though I saw it and I had like all these thoughts about it and I felt like very bad about certain aspects of the film, I don't think it's anywhere near the bottom of this film. Like I said, I think the film is good. I would never say the film is bad personally. Now, would I fight somebody saying it's bad? No. Will I find somebody saying it's perfect? Yes. But I think the film is good. I watched it 3 times. Like, I have to think it's good to watch it that many times, right? And 2 times I watched it on my couch. And it was interesting and exhilarating and, fun. I don't want to say fun because I did just down it for me. It's fun. But it's a good watch every single time. When it comes to the core 5 attributes of the film, is it set in California? Yes. Malfeasance in America, is it done well? Yes. Through lines surrounding fatherhood, yes. Sexuality and nudity, none of that. Not really. Sexuality, yes. Perfidy of Beverly Hills is very sexual, but I already told y'all how I feel about that, so no. Protagonists getting their ending in the sun, yes. So I think it does the 5 attributes very well, except for one, which is the sexuality and nudity. So it's going to remain at number 5, and the dead smack in the center. I think that's a fine place to sit One Battle After Another, in my opinion. At number 4, we have Magnolia. So Magnolia is a film that I found to be extremely compelling. It follows an intricate network of many different characters in a 24-hour period where immense revelations, transformations, and breakthroughs occur, all concluding in a dramatic sci-fi-esque rainfall sequence that you didn't know you were in for until you got it. This film stars Tom Cruise, Julianne Moore, Philip Seymour Hoffman, John C. Reilly, Philip Hall, William H. Macy, Jeremy Blackman, and Melora Walters, right? What are my main takeaways from Magnolia? I feel like Magnolia executes the emotionality of every character plotline like very well, in my opinion. Julianne Moore's plotline may be like the least well executed of them all in this film due to like the absurdity of her character in this film. But the emotionality of all the stories surrounding like Tom Cruise and Melora Walters and Jeremy Blackman's characters in this film are personally like firmly pulling on my heart. So all the characters who like I was really enthralled with and all the storylines I would say that I'm like most enthralled with in this film all connect through like Earl Partridge, who's a character played by Jason Robards here, who's like this very like celebrity, like elderly character in this film or like in the Hollywood landscape, I would say. And so you have Tom Cruise's character here, who's kind of like the main character, and he's playing like this like misogynistic like incel grifter with like a hidden past that nobody really knows about until he gets exposed by like this interviewer in the interview who like kind of like makes a crack in like his shell in regards to like the persona that he's putting on. But then like the rest of the film he has to like deal and like confront like his true identity and like his feelings with like his unresolved feelings with his deadbeat father Earl Partridge, who is now dying. And then that brings us over like to Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, who's like nursing Earl Partridge in this film on his deathbed. And having to toe the line in regards to like consideration to his patient, but who's also his friend, but also like ensuring that like everyone who's in like the sphere of Earl like gets like the closure they need, because like his character is like a healthcare provider. Like he's here to aid people in healing, and like that's another way to like heal people, right? And then also like this film, like I don't like dogs. I'm not a dog person at all, but like all the dog usage in this film are actually done very like keenly. And I think like one of my favorite lines, like when Tom Cruise is like, any of those dogs touch me, like I'm out of here. Like that's literally my whole mood. So like I related to Tom Cruise's character on a few levels, not the grifter level, but on some other levels, right? And then you have Jeremy Blackman's character, Stanley, who is like on this like kids Jeopardy show, which is kind of like being funded or like on the network or like used to be hosted by like Earl Partridge. That's how he's connected to him. But he has this relationship with his father who seems like very active and present in his life, right? Because he's his manager. but is essentially like just using him as like a financial tool. And he witnesses, and like we witness, I mean, how his feelings and individuality is like compromised by the adults who are like surrounding him in this like studio set, and how like, his father like perpetuates him to like exist in like such circumstances as well, which I thought was like really great to depict, as well as like that line that he has in like the third act where he goes to his dad in his room and he's like, "Dad, you need to be nicer to me." And his dad's like, "Get out of my room." And he's like, "No, you need to be nicer to me." And he says it twice, like sternly. And his dad's like, "Go to bed." But it's kind of like, you don't know the outcome of that, but you just feel like that communication level was like freeing for this character of Stanley, but also you feel like his dad like understood like, you are going to lose your child and like create your child like some real serious issues if you keep going down this path. And I think he kind of got it. You would hope that he got it. But then you have like another character like Claudia, who's played by Melora Walters, who has like this major like substance abuse issue. And you're like, the whole film, you're kind of like wondering like, what is going on with this girl? Like, why is she like so drugged out? Why is she so erratic? Like, why is she so like why is she acting like this? But then she's like very distant from her father, her father Jimmy, I mean, who's played by Philip Hall, I believe, in this film. And that's like the most questionable fashion of the film. Like, I think it's like, why is she so like distant from her father? Like, why is she so resistant to her father? And then like, you don't want to believe like your worst instincts, so like assuming like what about her father like really like drives her crazy. But then like the film allowed our expectations of Jimmy, because they built him up throughout this film as like this like upstanding guy, to like build to like the reveal that he like assaulted Claudia, and like he himself is acting like he didn't do it, yet he then like dies in the film. So then like you kind of like feel like, okay, justice was served, and like, you know, Claudia gets like her closure from that too. But it's all just very like striking. Like everything is so intense in this film, in my opinion. And then you have like Julianne Moore's like fake out death in the car parking lot, which I thought was hilarious when the little boy's like looking in there. But I'm glad that he called the cops, because like that was hilarious to me. And then you have like William H. Macy and John C. Reilly storylines here, who are like not as interesting as the other characters, in my opinion. Honestly, like whenever we went over to like William H. Macy and John C. Reilly's characters, I kind of was like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? Like, I'm a little bored with them. But like, I think that would be, honestly, that's some of my only critique for this film, is I think like we gave a little bit too much time to John C. Reilly in this film and William H. Macy. But outside of that, when it comes to like the core 5 PTA film attributes, like it's set in California perfectly. The malfeasance in American society is done well. The fatherhood storyline executed very well. You have like sexuality and nudity in this film. It's not really present in this film at all. So like that's not really done well, but it's not that it's not done well. It's just not done. It's not a part of the film at all. So I would still give it to it. And then like protagonists get their ending in the sun. They do. Not all of them. Some people die, but they do get their ending in the sun, or I should say like the moonlight, because like the film ends at night, I believe, with the frogs raining down. So I had a great time with Magnolia, and it's going to stay at number 4. And I think number 4 is a proper place to place Magnolia, because I can see how people like don't like Magnolia, but I really, really enjoyed myself with Magnolia. Coming in at number 3. Okay, so now we're at the top 3. So like, if you know all of Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography, you know what films are left. And you might be questioning like, where the hell is he about to put one of these films? Well, you don't have to question anymore, because you already know like there's 2 films that are left out the top 3 of my top 3, I should say, that like there's 2 of those films that like are definitely better than the third film. And what third film am I talking about? I'm talking about Punch Drunk Love, yes. So Punch Drunk Love is kind of like a perfect film. Like for me personally, I'm really drawn to romantic dramas, as you can already tell based on if you watch any of my other videos, if you watch my video on the drama, if you watch my video on Sorry Baby, if you watch my video on Sentimental Value, if you watch my video on any of my other videos, I say all the time, I love romantic dramas. Romantic dramas always get me, and Punch Drunk Love is a romantic drama. They try to say it's a rom-com, it's not a rom-com, it's a romantic drama in my opinion. And so, you know, you have Adam Sandler here, who like, I'm not really big on modern day Adam Sandler, but like OG Adam Sandler or like intermediate Adam Sandler, like Adam Sandler pre-2011, I love. And so here you have like prime Adam Sandler. And his character arc in this film is great, in my opinion. Like I love to see the evolution and maturity of a protagonist in a film, especially in the way that it's done here. And then you also, I think the greatest benefit of this film, the greatest addition, or like the greatest aspect of this film, is Philip Seymour Hoffman. I think the conversation between Philip Seymour Hoffman's character and Adam Sandler's character in the third act of this film is probably like my favorite moment out of all moments in Paul Thomas Anderson's entire filmography. Or maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I should say that. I would say it's my favorite Philip Seymour Hoffman moment in all of Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography. That's what I'll say. It's odd, like how like in The Master isn't like near any top of my favorite like Philip Seymour Hoffman like performances. Yet like this is like because I think like the subtle usages of Philip Seymour Hoffman are way more powerful than like the overt utilization of him by Paul Thomas Anderson. I think if I was like to rank all of Philip Seymour Hoffman's like performances in Paul Thomas Anderson films, I'm only doing this because like this is the last time we're going to talk about him. It would be like Punch Drunk Love at the top, and then it would be like Magnolia, and then it would be The Master, and then it would be Boogie Nights, and then it would be Hard Eight. But honestly, like you could just go ahead and put like that's crazy if I said that. I was gonna say you could put his performance in The Master at the bottom. Honestly, in terms of like what my personal favorites are, and so like it would be like Philip Seymour Hoffman in Punch Drunk Love, Philip Seymour Hoffman in Magnolia, Philip Seymour Hoffman in Boogie Nights, Philip Seymour Hoffman. I'm gonna put The Master at 4, and then Philip Seymour Hoffman at Hard Eight. That would be like my ranking of Philip Seymour Hoffman and Paul Thomas Anderson collaborations. But I think Emily Watson is also like a pleasure in this film as well. And I think that all the story beats of this film I love dearly. There's some people who don't like Punch Drunk Love, but I like Punch Drunk Love. Maybe I'm just easy that way when it comes to romantic dramas, but who knows? So I really had no issues when it comes to like the core like top 5 PTA like film attributes. Like it's set in California, malfeasance in America is there. There's no fatherhood storylines, but like sexuality and nudity is there. And then like the protagonists get there ending in the sun. I love all of it. So now we're at top 2, and I think like if you already know Paul Thomas Anderson films, like you already know what 2 films are left, and I'm not even gonna like try to drag this out. At number 2 comes Phantom Thread. So Phantom Thread is also another film that I found to be perfect for me because why? I love romantic dramas. It's another romantic drama, but even more than Punch Drunk Love because like instead of being like this romantic drama leaning into like rom-com world, it's like a legit romantic drama. Like this is dramatic as hell. And so like in this film, instead of Adam Sandler in the romantic drama lead, we have Daniel Day-Lewis here who's being, like he's doing an exquisite performance as Reynolds Woodcock. And then you have Vicky Krieps who's across from him as Alma doing an exquisite performance as well. And then you have Leslie Manville who's playing Cyril who's doing an exquisite performance as well. And honestly, she's underrated. And I feel like Paul Thomas Anderson, I feel like he saw the future. He saw that I was gonna be downing one battle after another and I was gonna be criticizing one battle after another and coming for his throat on that. He was like, I'm gonna be a little hater, I'm gonna be a little petty, and I'm gonna strike about like 2-3 scenes of Leslie Manville out of Phantom Thread so then he can't eat good when he gets to my other filmography. Yep, that's what he did because in my opinion, I needed 2-3 more scenes with Leslie Manville in this film. Like I really needed that, I really did. Now, when I initially watched Phantom Thread, I didn't feel that like the ending was proper at first. But like literally after I finished Phantom Thread, I rewound like the whole entire third act. I was like, let me go back 30 minutes and I rewound the whole entire third act and then it felt proper. Then when I rewatched the third act, it didn't hit me like randomly, but then it felt proper. Like the twist at the end, it felt proper after that. Because I felt like these people like weren't good for each other. Like I was like, they shouldn't be together. Like I don't think these people should be together. I don't feel right about this. But then when I circled back the whole third act again, I was like, they actually should be together. Now, when it comes to the core 5 attributes of a PTA film that I already outlined, I don't think that this film hits on like majority of them, but it's still great in spite of it. So that's why it's at number 2, honestly. It's not set in California. It doesn't talk about the malfeasance in American society. It doesn't have a through line of fatherhood. There isn't really any sexuality or nudity in it. There is sexuality, like you do have the kiss scene in the dance hall and things like that, but not really a lot, not any more than like other films that he has. And then the only thing that it does have of the core attributes is that they do get to walk off into the sun together. But despite it only having 1 out of the 5 attributes that I base my ranking on, like I was like, I can't even put this lower than number 2. Like I had such a good time with Phantom Thread, y'all. You do not understand. Which brings us to the number 1 slot on the ranking. And what is that? That is gonna be the masterpiece that is There Will Be Blood. Now, I found There Will Be Blood to just be purely amazing. It follows the ambitious oil man Daniel Plainblue, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, in pursuit of greatness during the California oil boom in the early 1900s as he battles the perils of capitalism, greed, family, and sacrifice. And this film is like the ultimate slow burn in terms of like character building over PTA's filmography, in my opinion. From the character of like Eli, played by like Paul Dano, to like HW, played by Dylan Feaser, to Daniel Plainview, played by Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, it all starts, run, and concludes so thick and like sweetly. Like, it's so potent. Like, that's the word for this film. Like, it's so potent. Like, it's Paul Thomas Anderson's most potent film, in my opinion, when it comes to quality. Now, while the film does make very grand statements on like American capitalism and greed, I think the grandest statement that it makes here is in regards to fatherhood, which I do think is like the most passionate form of storytelling that Paul Thomas Anderson cares about. And the fact that like this executed it at the highest level imaginable, in my opinion, from Paul Thomas Anderson's output, that only is another reason to put it at the top of the list. Everything in regards to fatherhood here is just great. We can just go ahead and go down the list. So you have like Paul Sunday here and his father, who's played by Paul Dano, and he wants to sell their farm to like uphold their family through like the economic standpoint at the time, right? But then he dies off screen, I believe. And then you go to Eli Sunday, who's his twin brother, also played by Paul Dano, and his dynamic with his father, where he has like this immense resentment towards his father for like praising his brother Paul Sunday for selling out to Daniel, but also like allowing someone as ruthless and intimidating as Daniel to come in and overthrow them basically in their town, where like his father's supposed to be like the pastor and like this man of stature. We have this dichotomy within Eli of like feeling like a small fish in a big pond and actually being a small fish in a big pond. And he like tries to supersede his father as a pastor, but like more so he's really trying to supersede like this father figure superior to him in like Daniel Plainview as like a businessman. Like, being a better businessman is really what's on his heart, but he knows he can never supersede Daniel in that way. So he's using like the church and religion to try to like uphold like his like stature in many ways, which I found like great on screen, because I think Paul Dano does great in this film. And then you also have like Daniel Plainview and HW, which is like the crux of like the fatherhood storytelling in this film. And it's really like the heart of the entire film, in my opinion. And like, he takes his baby from one of his workers who dies on his site, and then he becomes like HW becomes like the Robin to his Batman. And then like he aids him in building like this oil empire, and then which almost kills the kid. And then it's like a glorious scene, by the way, where like the fire goes out and like, he like, if you know. Leaving HW disabled, which kind of like sparks the first crack in their relationship, and it leads Daniel to have to like strike like pure rift between them, so like they can both like be the best who they can, like both heal separately from that, like Daniel's guilt, but then also HW's like resentment towards his father. Like, they have to separate so they have time away, and like also Daniel is like not competent enough as a father to like really deal with HW in the best way possible, in my opinion. And then you have HW, he comes back and they actually like regain their bond while like succeeding in the business, until HW begins to like develop things that like Daniel doesn't have within himself. What am I talking about? I'm talking about like friends and like a romantic partner and like new ambition for things in life. And then while Daniel like only begins to realize that like at the top of the pyramid, it's like lonely. Like, that's everything he's starting to realize over the course of this film. And when all you care about in life is like ascension and monetary gain, like, you're not going to have anything at the end of life. And it leads us to like this final sequence in the third act, where like we time jump about like 10 years into the future, and Daniel has like devolved into like the most miserable and like worst version of himself. He's like a pure alcoholic. And it leads him to having like this final confrontation with HW, who comes to confront him, to ask him to allow him to move on and start his own oil business in Mexico. And Daniel is like so cruel to him, and he like forces HW to like hate him in a sense. Like, he kind of like forces him to. It's a very much like a, you can't best me. Like, I'm gonna make you hate me. You cannot stand there and say that you hate me on your own volition. Like, I'm gonna make you hate me and make you really, really, really like have to hold on to those feelings you swear you have about me. It's very immature on Daniel's part, but it's like, it's so heartbreaking, because you've seen how close they were at some point. You've seen like his love for HW at one point and HW's love for him at one point, and you see how like not even HW was immune or off the board for Daniel in regards to his pursuit, like his greed for power and control and like superiority over all the men surrounding him, in my opinion. So you have Daniel here who's forcing HW to hate him if he wants to gain independence from him. And HW chooses such a route that Daniel offers him because he has to. Like, he's trying to hurt him and to disown him to the umpteenth degree, but he has to choose this path because he wants to become his own man just like his dad did. But more importantly, he wants to be free just like his dad did. He wants to build something of his own and have his own family and be Daniel to a certain extent. Which is like so relatable to a certain extent in regards to like your relationship with like your father. Sometimes like breaking free of your father is like the best way to go about life because your father just can't be who you want them to be for you. And that's like a very relatable subject for me. So I think this film, when it comes to like the PCA, like core attributes, it does everything like times 10. It's set in California times 10. Malfeasance in American society is done times 10. The through line of fatherhood is done times 20, in my opinion. The sexuality and nudity is present in this film as well. The protagonists get their ending in the sun. They do. Because even though they both go separate ways, HW and Daniel, and it's like this very upsetting like ending to their bond, HW does get to go off with his wife and go create his oil company in Mexico. And Daniel then does get the satisfaction at the end of this film by killing Eli at the end as well, which is like not good. It's not a day in the sun, but for Daniel, it is a day in the sun because Daniel's going to get away with it because it's the early 1900s and nobody's going to come and try to get him for it. So everybody gets their day in the sun in this film. And I think this film is just a masterpiece. Like, I really do. And like, if I was to give this film a rating, like, I'm not giving any of the other films rating, but this film is like a 10 out of 10. It's 11 out of 10 for me. I really need to watch this film really soon. But yeah, like There Will Be Blood is like the utmost highest quality Paul Thomas Anderson film, in my opinion. If you disagree with that, I don't see how you're like a person who loves Paul Thomas Anderson. I don't even see how you're just like a Paul Thomas Anderson enjoyer. And like There Will Be Blood is not in your top 3. Like, there's people who are putting one battle after another and they're like at number 1 or number 2, and like There Will Be Blood was like at number 4 or 5. I was like, what the hell? Like, what the hell is going on with these people? But for me, There Will Be Blood is that film in his filmography. So yes, these are my thoughts on One Battle After Another and Paul Thomas Anderson's entire filmography. If you agreed with anything I said in this video, or you like my ranking, or you didn't like my ranking, let me know in the comments. Let me know what your ranking is in the comments as well. Even if you haven't watched his entire filmography, which I think you should, because I think it's a good time. But if you only watch like half of his films, or only 3 or whatever, leave your ranking of what you've seen from PTA in the comments as well. And always like, comment, and subscribe. And as I always say, I just want to be cinephile, and these are my thoughts. I will see y'all in the next video. Bye.